we have breaking news for you. We've just been talking about, of course, Morgan McSweeney, the Chief of Staff, the second one to go for the Prime Minister. His resignation yesterday of the Peter Mandelson scandal. We've now had another resignation from number 10. It's only 11 in the morning. Keir Starmer's Director of Communications, Tim Allan, has now also resigned, issuing a statement saying, "I've decided to stand down to allow a new number 10 team to be built. I wish the PM and his team every success." Well, bear in mind that Tim Allan was another one of those people who worked very closely with Peter Mandelson before Tony Blair got into office. He was working hand in glove with Alistair Campbell back in sort of 95, 96, 97 years to get Tony Blair into office, and then went off and made, frankly, shed loads of cash as a lobbyist to the government that he'd helped get elected. Very sharp guy, very clued in, very well connected, and Tim Allan has gone. He was brought in only very recently, of course, to deal with all the fallout of all the other resignations we've seen. A question I'm putting to you today, I think it's become even more urgent. Can Keir Starmer survive the Mandelson scandal? What happens next? Well, we've already had a second resignation. At this point, it is perfectly likely that Keir Starmer will be gone by the end of the week, in a few days. Who knows? By today, will he make it as far as the 6 o'clock meeting he's got with backbench Labour MPs? Where are all those cabinet ministers? Where are they all? I mean, can you literally silence? That is the sound of all those cabinet ministers coming out to bat for the Prime Minister, insisting he must stay on. He's got the mandate from the British people. But no, they are not out there. Junior Minister and Jackie Smith was out doing the rounds today, and she made a valiant effort. We just had George Fawkes on. There's a few making a valiant effort, but realistically, does he last? Is he even going to wait until the next by-election in 2 weeks' time? Is he going to wait till after the local elections? Is that what the people who are vying for his job want him to do? Do they want it to wait longer? Are we going to wait for some more Epstein revelations? They are coming thick and fast, not just about what's going on in government, but of course also for Palace as well, with the latest revelations today about Andrew, the former prince. Love to hear your thoughts on all of this. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. Text the word talk in your message on to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at Talk TV. Calls to charge at the national rate. Text costs £1. Standard network rate message. We're also going to be talking about more illegal migrants who've come to Britain under Keir Starmer than any other Prime Minister. Well done. See, another one of his great achievements, it's not the Epstein scandal that's going to do for the Prime Minister, it's all the other inadequacies and failures. Also, we're going to be talking about the Briton Jimmy Lai, who's been jailed for 20 years in Hong Kong. He's 78 years old. It's a death sentence. He's going to die behind bars. This is under China's national security law. But remember the Prime Minister had all that influence with the Chinese and got so much out of his trip to Beijing? Yeah, what he got out of it was a British man. He's got a British passport and has had it for 30, 40 years, has been sentenced to basically die behind bars. What's his crime? Well, protesting for democracy. Yeah, well done, Prime Minister. Such great success. We'll talk about that. Joining me for the chat today, Benedict Spence, Conservative commentator. I mean, that news, I wonder if there are going to be more to come. Charitably, let's say, Tim Allan has been part of the ancien regime. Yeah. He's part of that gang, the Mandelson gang. He's now leaving, so he can just appoint a whole load of new people. It's the idea, and we have the same issue with the Prime Minister himself. It's the idea that there is this amazing, that was the A team, the A plus team is waiting behind the scenes. Bearing in mind how bad the A team were, right? We had Sue Gray. She knows how government works. How rubbish was she? Morgan McSweeney, Mr. Election Strategist Guru. How rubbish was he with his poor advice to the Prime Minister? Every U-turn, everything. The guy, people, if you think that guy is a great strategist, I've got a lovely bridge just across the road for just there to sell you. And now he's lost someone who is definitely a deaf hands at communication, but maybe even for Tim Allan, a man who has made millions from being a good communicator and advising people, you can't advise someone who won't take good advice, surely.
I mean, the gig's up, I think, but we already knew that the gig was up even before this, but this just makes it clear that actually it's not simply the number 10 going, right, well, we'll get rid of this guy and that'll be it. That'll sort of stem the bleeding, because whether or not this was Tim Allan, being, loyal to Morgan McSweeney or just deciding, look, I've had enough of all of this, it starts then the drip feed of people who might then start to leave of their own volition, who were not implicated in any aspect of the Mandelson story at all. The next stage then is cabinet ministers. do the cabinet ministers do what they did to Margaret Thatcher and sit down with the Prime Minister and say, well, look, I'll support you, but I can't guarantee that everybody else will, and if you do get that sort of drip feed, and they all say the same thing, but all it then takes is one of them to go, well, I'm not going to back you, I think you need to go. Because once that person breaks cover, they may not become, believe that they're going to be Prime Minister themselves, but that's the point.
But if they thought, if you're at top echelons of the Labour Party, and if you think Keir Starmer is going to stay and is going to still be the centre of power in your party and the heart of government, you would want to stick by him. If you think, however, it's not looking good and he might just be out by the end of the week, let alone by after the May elections, then you don't want to be more associated with him and have mud on your face when the next scandal comes out. We've already established that appointing Mandelson as the ambassador to Washington was the wrong decision. We know that because he was sacked. We knew from PMQs last week. Remember, we all had that sort of gasp, like, oh, when Kemi Baigner asked him, did you know, but when you made the appointment, that he was continued his friendship with Jeffrey Epstein? And yes, I did, he said. That was the moment when, whoa, whoa, whoa. So then he's blamed his advice, he blamed the security vetting. They're going to have, the processology has started, they're going to reassess the vetting. There's no way in the world that MI5, MI6, whoever it was doing the vetting, didn't give them all the information. That's their job, it's what they do. So is it the National Security Advisor, Jonathan Powell, who has to go next? We've lost the Director of Communications, lost the Chief of Staff. At that point, everyone the Prime Minister has appointed is saying it was the wrong decision to make that decision. But he's the one who made the decision.
Yeah, and this is always the staggering thing when it comes to this beginning of the end, this drip feed process. You're going to go either way. We all know he's going to go. So why not just go?
And also, whether it's today, this week, after the Gorton by-election, after the local elections, no one sane. I mean, I don't know what miracle would have to happen, because I can see no good news coming down the line. We're not going to have an economic miracle and everything's suddenly going to be hunky-dory. We've all got an extra 10 grand in our bank accounts. That's not going to happen. So I don't know what they're waiting for. It's going to be just as bad, is it not? But here's the thing. Let me just play the clip. And I played it earlier, and I just do think this is relevant. This is a man we know as Keir Starmer. When he was not Prime Minister, he was running for the leadership of the Labour Party. Very different person. Who knew who he was? Who knew he was when he became Prime Minister? Who knew but this was January 2020. And this is what he had to say when he's on stage and he's asked about stuff. I think this was in relation, to Boris Johnson turning on his stuff. But this is what he had to say.
Hear me out. I had 8,000 staff for 5 years as the Director of Public Prosecutions. And I acted, I hope, in the right way with them, which is when they had victories, I celebrated on their behalf. I picked up awards on their behalves. And when they made mistakes, I carried the can. I never turn on my staff, and you should never turn on your staff.
You never turn on your staff, but it would have been he had. Now, we don't know the circumstances in which Tim Allen's left. I don't think there's any pressure for Tim Allen to go. But there's an argument there where you'd be going, please don't go. It's going to look really bad if you go. So why has he chosen to go now?
Yeah, and the thing is, I imagine it's because he's decided that the jig is up and that it's best for him just to
get the hell out.
Yeah, basically to go before but the entire edifice sort of comes crashing down. Look, this is not somebody who sort of desperately needs this job or anything like that. No. They can just decide, oh, look, this isn't working, it's not for me, I don't want to. I came in,
I wanted to try and turn things around and I can't. Well,
exactly.
Tell you what's really interesting, of course, we've already seen, the fallout from all of this is just extraordinary. We're likely to get a new Prime Minister as a result. This is the last thing. We've got Mandelson having the police searching his home in Wiltshire and his home in London. He, of course, has denied any wrongdoing. But he's facing urge to, pay back the £55,000 golden goodbye he got when he was sacked. I don't know why people are getting golden goodbyes when they get sacked for the job. OK, those no one's accusing him of misconduct as US ambassador. But my thing is, if the Prime Minister thinks that money shouldn't be paid, well, you should pay us back that money, mate, because you're the one who appointed him to the job. And he says Mandelson lied to him. If you lie to someone to get a job, you don't get a payoff. It's gross misconduct. You don't get a payoff. So why the hell is my tax money and your tax money being used to pay this guy off? And by the way, he doesn't need the money. We've got Jonathan Powell, the National Security Advisor. He's also under fire as well. Again, another one of that Blair coterie. I always think the key thing here is just this thing that basically there was just no one of the new generation, the younger generation, who was any good. They had to basically bring in a whole load of, as someone keeps saying, putting the old Blair band back together. These are all old Blairites. And I don't think that's what people thought they were getting when they elected Keir Starmer. Certainly not what the membership of the party thought they were getting.
I was going to say, if you put to the electorate at the last election, would you like New Labour 0.20? And it's the same guys, but just a new guy at the top. I think most people would have gone, no, I seem to remember voting against that a couple of years ago and not wanting it ever to come back. But that is what we've been given. But I think it speaks simply to the lack of talent in the Labour Party in general. And this is not something that is specific to the Labour Party. We saw this with the Tories in the dying days of the last government. Actually, both political parties, major political parties, have been hollowed out. They've replaced, once upon a time we did actually have quite a, good coterie of competent people, even if, they didn't always work out.
You could disagree with someone, but you could think they were intellectually,
This is not me
capable.
being sort of morose for the sake of it. There has been noticeably a lowering of the standards of the sort of people we have in politics, and the Labour Party is as as big a symbol of that as the Tories were. So this is why you then have to end up bringing those people back. But the problem is, those are already people who have lost elections in the past. They might have won them, but they've also lost them, and you have to ask yourself, why?
OK, here's the thing for the Labour Party. Who's the better bet, though? Do you want to keep Keir Starmer limping on and take the heat for the by-elections and local elections, Scottish elections, Welsh elections? Or you're thinking, maybe we could do better if we change sooner? The problem is the process for electing a new Labour leader is very lengthy, so they're unlikely to be in place. There's talk about at the weekend maybe some sort of caretaker person put in. Now, we've not really. There's one thing a Prime Minister staying in office after they have resigned, waiting for the next person. You have they've resigned from the leadership, but they are still the Prime Minister. I'm not sure whether there's a mandate for that. And you've got the likes of your Angela Rayner's, who, when like Boris Johnson steps down, say, well, he got the mandate. There's no mandate for the next person. There needs to be an election. There will be a lot of pressure because their words are going to come back and splat them in the face for whoever gets the leadership of the party. In fact, it's interesting. We've already moved on to that now. We're already here's Karma's toast. We're moving on to hold an election, which they will not want to do given where they are in the polls. Leadership contenders on manoeuvres. Angela Rayner. Getting your hair done, putting it on Insta. Angela Rayner, this is embarrassing. Please stop acting like you're an influencer living in Dubai. It's just not a good look. But she's got this HMRC investigation over not paying stamp duty there. That is dragging its feet. She obviously wants that to get done with so she can run for an election. We've got Wes Streeting. He's another Mandelson protege, he wants that to sort of go away before any leadership election. Andy Burnham, not yet an MP, hoping that he can actually get a by-election. He needs the NEC, Keir Starmer, not to block his chances of getting in. The only person I think who really wants to have an election sooner rather than later would be Ed Miliband. And then there's talk about him, if he did become leader, even if Labour were down in the polls, he would offer some sort of coalition with Zach Polanski of the Green Party. I mean, guys, be careful what you wish for.
If I were Keir Starmer, what I'd do is I would offer to resign my seat and let Andy Burnham stand in it. If all of the other cabinet ministers who all want his job said, it's time to go, Prime Minister, I'd be sat there going, all right, this is what I'm going to do right at the tail end. Let's see what you do about that. Obviously, it's not going to happen, but that would be the...
He should stand up and give a speech and go, look at this bunch of losers. I'm rubbish, but they're even worse than me. Look, the allegations involving women, Virginia Giuffre, another woman, police looking into that, those are very, very, very troubling. The Prince and Princess of Wales have said they are, deeply concerned, and they're concerned, their thoughts remain with the victims of Epstein. But this latest revelation of basically, of what was Andrew doing a Mandelson, for all intents and purposes, if these documents, no man has been accused of a crime yet, if these or charged, if these documents are legitimate, basically within minutes of getting information, passing it on to Jeffrey Epstein. What do you make of that?
Well, it's clearly a case, if proven by the Metropolitan Police, and they've got to investigate this one, of misconduct in public office.
Yeah.
It's a serious crime, and they have to prove it. A lot of what Andrew was doing was in the public domain. As far as paperwork is concerned, that wasn't, obviously. And whatever he passed over, the Met have got to decide, is there a case to answer for? Do they know what papers were handed over? Maybe it's all contained within the 3.5 million documents that were released over 10 days ago.
Yeah, I mean, it is extraordinary. I mean, the allegations against Peter Mandelson and, you know, his Wiltshire and London homes were searched by police rather publicly over the weekend. But, you know, there's going to be some big question marks about the police, whether they go in for Prince Andrew, wherever he is right now, in the estate in Norfolk. But there are some really big issues over what on earth is he thinking. He's the UK trade envoy. He's representing his own mother's government at the time and handing over information that he's been given privately about what's happened on these visits to China and Vietnam and elsewhere, and then handing that over to his mate who lets him come and stay in his house or come on his island. I mean, I know the key thing with misconduct in public office is with that charge, there has to be sort of proven, you know, knowledge. You had to be doing it with intent. But I mean, why would he be handing that information other than he thinks that information would be useful to Jeffrey Epstein?
And useful to him, as he made very clear in that interview in 2019, that bit of car crash interview, he was using Epstein in the same way as Epstein was using him.
Yeah.
Although I think Epstein was getting more out of Andrew than Andrew was getting out of Epstein. But the police have got to prove misconduct in public office. Whether they go in boots and all the same way as they did with Mandelson over the weekend remains to be seen. A lot of Andrew's stuff, some of it is in Norfolk, some of it is in Royal Lodge, Windsor, and some of it probably is in the vaults of Buckingham Palace. So the police have got to decide, is there a case to answer for? Are they going to investigate, and how are they going to do it?
But the thing about this is, and it's interesting, my last guest, Lord Fowkes, was saying it when he, as a peer, when he tried to raise concerns about Andrew in the Lords, he was told, no, you're in the Lords, you're not allowed to raise any issues about the royal family, which is an outrage, that they shouldn't. But the key thing is, you know, when there were these allegations for judiciary fray, credible allegations, it went to a court case, you know, a civil case, he settled for about 10 million quid, partly paid for by the Queen, as we've discussed many times before, the late Queen, that the police at no point ever bothered to interview Andrew. Now, given that people get interviewed over writing a tweet that someone doesn't like, misgendering someone, as it's claimed, but the police didn't think it was worth their time to go and interview a man about the allegation that he had sex with a 17-year-old who'd been trafficked by a convicted paedophile, is a bit staggering, let's be honest.
It is staggering, a legitimate question, Julia, and you're absolutely right. By convention, politicians don't discuss the royal family and the House of Commons. That has been going on for decades, and that is the decision that they have made. But as far as police investigating, yes, you're absolutely right. They'll investigate somebody who's misgendering somebody, calling them Mr. instead of Miss or Ms. But when it comes to something serious, they seem to throw their hands up and put their hands over their ears.
But especially when it's royals. I mean, bearing in mind, you know, those allegations, front page of the papers and Times and others about Sunday Times about the King, and, you know, carrier bags full of cash for one of his charities from a Middle Eastern businessman. As soon as he became king, completely gone away. But I mean, these are legit. I mean, you know, no one should be above the law.
And no one is above the law and shouldn't be. You're absolutely right. And the police really have to get their act together and investigate properly, whether it's royal family, whether it's prime minister, whether it's politicians, whoever it is. If a crime has been committed, they investigate it. But the problem is with the police, they will differentiate to what is a crime and what isn't a crime, what they can investigate and what they can't. They're being very selective. They're protecting their own because they won't investigate their own. They're protecting the royal family. They're protecting politicians. They've got to start acting like policemen.
Yes. Yeah, without fear or favour. I think there's been a lot of political pressure. I mean, what do you make of Prince William and Catherine expressing that they are deeply concerned by the continuing revelations from the Epstein files? Because, of course, this is getting very close to home with Andrew. But, I mean, there's no love lost between the King and the Prince of Wales and Andrew, is there?
No, it's been getting close to the royal family for years now. And the fact that William and Catherine have expressed their concern is a step in the right direction. Now we need to hear more from the King and other members of the royal family. Probably the King will nail it as far as the royal family is concerned. But the fact that William and Catherine have come out with something is going to prompt the King to do something.
Yeah, indeed. He's not out and about today. Actually, and Prince William is off to Saudi Arabia later this evening. I imagine all public events, they are going to be asked about this now. It's not going to go away. I mean, just where do we even start? I mean, I want to talk to you about some actual policies that affect people, but, you know, who is the Prime Minister affects people as well. But Keir Starmer, people are saying, like, you know, he could be out today by the end of the week. No one thinks he's going to be surviving to the summer, that's for sure. He's lost his Director of Communications today, someone most people probably would never heard of. He's been in the job such a short period of time. He lost his Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney, yesterday, specifically because he gave the advice to the Prime Minister to appoint Peter Mandelson, and he says that was the wrong decision. Do you think Keir Starmer survives?
I can see Keir Starmer hobbling on, Julia, until May. I actually think that there are too many competing interests around that cabinet table for them to make the ultimate decision to be off with him just yet.
You think basically because they don't know, they haven't got like an obvious, you know, king over the water, even, you know, Mr. King of the North, Andy Burnham, because he's not even an MP yet. Because they can't agree who they want, they'd rather just sit and wait.
Exactly, Julia, and I hope the last one out remembers to turn off the lights because, of course, as you well know, we've got Ed Miliband's climate targets to meet, so we cannot let that slip.
Of the options on the table, because, again, if we think he's going, he ain't going to call... I mean, people say, we could just call an election, goes to the King. He's not going to call an election. Realist. No. I mean, I may be wrong. I don't think he is. In which case, they're going to hobble on. Who, as I put to a call a few minutes, who's your best case and who's your worst case scenario in terms of, forget for reform's chances, for the country? Yeah. Let's think of the country.
For the country, I'd say that the less likely option that the Labour Party would select would be someone like Wes Streeting, Julia. But, you know, I think he probably would be the best worst case for the country. But ultimately, I think it'll be someone like Ed Miliband. I don't think it'll be Shabana Mahmood, unlike one of your previous callers, Julia. But it'll be between Ed Miliband and Angela Rayner.
What a choice.
I know, absolutely. I mean, it is a depressing state of affairs, isn't it? If you were talking about Tony Blair, imagine this circus happening under that Blair government. You know, say what you want about Blair, but my God, did he have some element of professionalism over this lot of clowns?
Well, there is an element also. I mean, I watched him much more closely because I was a political journalist in Westminster, you know, and interviewed him and spent time. And what was the thing is every single week when things were going wrong, there would be a week like Tony Blair faces his toughest week in politics. And you look at him, he would go on a stage, he'd go on a long interview, he'd do a PMQs or a statement, and he would win everyone over because he was very clever, very sharp on his feet, thought on his feet. The thing is, Keir Starmer is very, very humdrum compared to him. He doesn't think on his feet, does he? He takes the lawyer aspect, and he hasn't got the charm or the charisma or the gift of the gab.
No, he definitely hasn't. And actually, to be honest with you, Julia, I would hate to be one of the poor souls that was stuck with him as my barrister because he cannot make a case to save his life. Quite literally, he's losing his career and he's unable to actually talk himself out of it, which was his job, which he was paid handsomely for too.
I know, and he's got a pension, and a whole act of Parliament to give him his super-duper pension as Director of Public Prosecutions. He said in January 2020, we were playing the clip a bit earlier, he said, you know, I never turn on my staff. He said he picked up awards on their behalf, and when I made mistakes, I carried the can. I never turn on my staff, and you should never turn on your staff. But the decision for Morgan McSweeney to go was surely, at least in part, the Prime Minister's decision.
Oh, absolutely. Ultimately, the decisions that are made fall on the executive. You know, Lord Attlee, the leader during the war, he actually said, Julia, that a weak minister is the one that allows the civil service to decide, and a strong minister is the one that actually takes the decisions himself. Well, this is a weak man who's been led by those who are making daft decisions, and he ultimately has to be the one that accepts responsibility for those decisions. Do you think he'd be saying that about Nigel Farage, Julia,
exactly.
letting him off like that?
Is it a resigning matter? I mean, basically, Morgan McSweeney saying it was the wrong decision and I'm the one who advised him to do this. He's basically saying it is a resigning matter. I mean, the Director of Communications, Tim Allan, is not resigning directly in relation to this, as far as we're aware. But if Morgan McSweeney says it was the wrong decision and it's a resigning matter by resigning, isn't he actually, rather than saving the Prime Minister, isn't actually he making him more weak?
Well, there's a litany of failures here, aren't there now? It's not just the decision to appoint Lord Mandelson as US ambassador. It's actually a slew of decisions on everything from, as you mentioned earlier, the links to the Lord Doyle, you know, and the support of candidates like that. They put forward people who, in any other political party, Julia, if they would be screaming bloody murder about the complete lack of standards and ethics within the person that put them forward. So where are those standards and ethics evident within this Labour Party? That's what I want to know.
That's always the issue, isn't it, for politicians who say, you know, I'm going to do this, I'm going to bring integrity, you know, the grown-ups are back in the room and all that. It's when they get hoisted by their own petard. It's usually over the fact that they've claimed one thing and then done something else. And we saw the Tories do that many times. Let's talk about your party, the Reform Party, and people are saying, no, we need more scrutiny of, you know, Nigel Farage's links with Russians. There were all those allegations. Of course, you remember you ended up in court cases and dealing with the Electoral Commission over allegations about, what was going on with his claims about the Russians trying to, fix the Brexit and all that. But there have been allegations about some, questionable links that your party leader, Nigel Farage, has had with people who perhaps are not, should we say, good for Britain's national security. Do we need to look more into that, given that he is, according to the polls, likely to be the next elected Prime Minister?
Oh, look, I think that's complete nut and nonsense. Ultimately, he has been as robust as he can be on supporting Ukraine, for example, as you have on this show, Julia. I don't think he'd be doing that if he was a paid-up putsch of Putin. You know, it is an absurdity. I think actually it's a distraction that's often used to try and tar the Reform UK. But the evidence simply does not bear out that this is a party that is against Russia's or in favour of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, for example. And actually, the warnings that have been made in the past, well, Nigel Farage was right to warn that actually the West was giving President Putin the sort of excuse to go into Ukraine. It should never have been allowed to happen. We should have been more robust on it. And quite frankly, the West has been weak and found wanton.
OK, well, I don't think we were giving him any excuse. I disagree on that front. Let's talk about Reform setting out their, I mean, assuming it's still going ahead today, setting out their plans for a shadow cabinet. He set out a timeline for appointing Reform UK's shadow cabinet. Basically, he says to get the party in shape for an election. He says it could be by the end of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, ultimately, we don't know how long that this weak and fragile. We've been talking about it all morning. You've been talking about it all morning. And actually, we don't know how long it's going to hobble on for. The facts are presented to us that in recent history, the Conservatives, once you had these similar styles of resignations, of sackings and all the rest of it, the turmoil around Dominic Cummings, Boris Johnson wasn't able to hobble on much longer, Julia. I don't believe that Keir Starmer will be able to, whether or not it's this year, whether or not it's next. We have to get our ducks in a row. We owe it to the country. We owe it to our voters to make sure that we are ready and raring to go on day one.
Well, this is one of the concerns a lot of people have who are very supportive of what your party stands for, which is the ability to deliver. And there's a lot of talk about emulating Donald Trump's second term in office, not his first term in office, and being ready to go. But given that we had Keir Starmer and his party, we may not agree with a lot of what they had to say or rate him as a person, but at the end of the day, we're looking at somebody leading a party that's been in office many times before, had a load of people who had 4 years to prepare for an election victory. Certainly in the last couple of years before the 2024 election, it was looking very likely that Labour would win. And they are still unbelievably, I don't think this is a party political matter, incompetent, useless, with no good ideas. I mean, and most of the things they've announced that got them in trouble have just been off-the-cuff things that have come out of the blue, not in a manifesto or anything. So what hopes could people have that your party are doing any more prep?
Well, because we are actually in open conversation talking about getting around through the policy working groups that we've established, led by Zia Youssef, a team of people who do want to come forward. They might be people, I've had conversations, Julia, with people who have been Labour supporters in the past, but they're coming forward to actually advise the party, to offer suggestions, because they recognise that Reform stands a really good chance of forming the next government, that we must form the next government in order to save us from the mess that we find ourselves in right now. So we are getting the right people around that table having those discussions with us about those different policy areas. And what we'll hear today will set the tone and the direction for leading up to that general election whenever it might come. We've got to be ready. We will be ready. And the record sums of investment that are coming into the party show donor intent and strength of purpose within our party to deliver the best possible prospectus for the country.
Well, let me tell you, the Prime Minister, he still is the Prime Minister, he's addressed staff at number 10 after the resignation of his Director of Communications, Tim Allan, and his Chief of Staff resigning yesterday. It's Morgan McSweeney. And he said, we go forward from here. We must prove that politics can be a force for good. I believe it can. I believe it is. We go with confidence as we continue changing the country. He is very much being put forward that, he says, politics can be for the public good. They've got a lot more work to do and he ain't going anywhere.
Well, it's just a total nonsense. I mean, the idea, if that's strong, you remember Theresa May saying she was strong and stable in the national interest? She was about as strong and stable as a three-legged chair. And I'm afraid that this is the way in which that Keir Starmer's administration is going to, on everything from the cancellation of local elections, the mass migration that's coming through. You mentioned earlier record numbers from this government.
I wanted to just mention that, actually.
Julia.
More small boat migrants have come to Britain under Keir Starmer than any other Prime Minister. Of course, this all really went crazy just a few years ago. Some 65,703 migrants have reached Britain across the Channel just since Labour won the election 19 months ago. That's an average of just over 790 a week. And even, the depths of winter in February, 3 boats carrying dozens of migrants across the Channel on Sunday, and more were expected today. This pushes the total number since Keir Starmer took office in July 2024, past Boris Johnson, who had 65,800. It's mind-blowing. Those gangs are not smashed. So this is where we come back to. It's not just about Lord Mandelson, is it? If Keir Starmer was ahead in the polls, getting policies done, smashed the gangs, delivering on the things that he said he would deliver on, the economy was going like a bazooka, steely focus on growth. If all of that was fine, no one would be expecting him to fall on his sword over Mandelson, would they?
No, I think you're right. I think ultimately if the other levers of government were being pulled in the right direction, that people would probably overlook it and feel richer in their pockets. Well, actually, we don't. We feel much poorer. Energy bills are sky high, some of the highest in the Western world, if not the world, Julia. And it took Boris Johnson twice as long to actually hit those numbers as far as illegal migration is concerned. And Starmer's great idea was to say, well, I'm going to go on bended knee to President Xi. Oh, I'm a poet and I didn't know it, Julia, and actually ask him to stop the sale, to ban the sale of these inflatable dinghies to the to those in mainland Europe.
The engines.
Exactly. And he's turned the English Channel into a taxpayer-funded Uber service, and he's saying that this is going to stop the boats. They have no intention of stopping the boats. He is a lawyer. He knows the legalities of actually being able to do it. He has no intention of doing it whatsoever. He is ideologically opposed to doing so.
Just finally, talk about ideologically opposed. Very briefly, the Labour Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, has said his ultimate goal is to reverse Brexit. He believes it's going to happen in his lifetime. Will it?
I think actually while Londoners are being stabbed on the streets and fleeced by the likes of you, Les, and all the rest of it, if he's busy daydreaming about Brexit and calling the single market the ultimate goal for him, well, he might be willing to ignore the biggest democratic mandate in British history. But I'm telling you now, I think come that election when he's up for office to stand again, that he'll find that the Reform UK party actually does incredibly well in London for the first time.
I'm sorry our time is quite short. Quite a lot of breaking news on major issues today, but I wanted to stick with this topic because I think it is really important. I'm somebody who went to university. I was on a full grant. I got paid to go to university, waged my way through the holidays, but just about made ends meet with a few grand of debt. Students now are coming out of university with, tens and tens and tens of thousands of pounds worth of debt. For many years, they were paying a very low interest rate. And then a few years back, that interest rate went up by a heck of a lot. And now a lot of young people, and people in this office, who've got tens of thousands of pounds worth of debt, tens and tens, they're paying off loads every month, and yet their debt is growing bigger. This is turning into something of a crisis, isn't it?
It is. You're absolutely right. And ironically, if you go to university now, you don't face those high interest rates. So there's a cohort of about 12 years worth of students who are facing these high interest rates, 6.2%, sometimes on debt that can be close to £100,000 a year. So it's a big thing. What I'm not hearing from the campaigners is exactly what they want the government to do about it. There are lots of different ideas floating around, but they all cost money.
OK, well, explain to us why this one cohort, because I remember we're not talking a lot about like Tony Blair at the moment, and you know, the people who tried to get him elected. I remember being absolutely horrified when he brought in tuition fees for which people would get loans in the first place. But he wanted to expand the number of people going to uni, and the idea was, well, they can't all be paid for. We're going to have to go to an American-style system, and people are going to get their debts. But it was like £1,000 a year. Then it was 3,000. Now it's £9,500 plus. Why did this particular cohort get lumbered with all the debt?
So it happened in 2012 during the coalition years, during the austerity years, when they wanted graduates to cover far more of the costs of their education, and they also wanted to build in a little bit of redistribution. So what happens is the really well-off graduates face that interest rate of 6.2%. Low-paid graduates don't. Their interest rate is lower at RPI, 3.2%, and they have their debt wiped out after 30 years. So it's a sort of redistributive system. And what people are finding, they're getting into their early 30s, getting on decent salaries for the first time, finding 9% of their income is going out of their bank account.
9%?
At the very moment, 9% above the threshold, which is about £28,000. Yeah. But it's the very moment in life they probably want to put down a deposit for a house, or they're getting married and having children. Yeah. And in effect, they feel like people felt in the early Thatcher years before she cut income tax. They feel like there's a big extra slug of tax in effect. And
effectively a graduate tax. And we'd had that big debate, I remember some years back, should there be a graduate tax or not? But of course, the reality is the children of the very wealthy, not even very wealthy, anyone fairly well-to-do, will pay their kids school university fees anyway, so that they're not actually facing the debt. But actually, we were told this was about, you know, widening access to university. And I have to say, I was stunned that charging people and having people having to take out loans did not see a lot of people from poorer backgrounds being put off university. On the contrary, it widened it. But the trouble is, a university degree with there's many, you know, as a best part of 50% of the population going to university now, it means that a university degree isn't worth as much as it used to be anymore. So you've got a lot of young people, they come out of uni and they got all this debt, and they have to start paying back at a pretty low wage now, but they're not in graduate type jobs. They're doing jobs which they could easily have done without a degree and without the debt.
Well, that is true for some. I mean, there are all sorts of careers now that insist you are a graduate that didn't used to. So the only choice you've got is to go to university. And I do believe in strong regulation of universities. So if there are bad quality courses with bad outcomes out there,
and there are plenty of those.
Yeah, well, regulators should be absolutely looking at any of those. But one of the challenges here is you sign up for a student loan when you're 17, typically. You've never had a job before. Yeah. The terms and conditions of the loan say the government can change them at any time they like, and they have done. Yeah. And they have done to load additional costs onto graduates. Much worse deal than when they first took out the loans. And then people are finding out what it means when they're in the labour market later on. So, you know, the reason this has become a big issue in the last couple of months is in the budget, Rachel Reeves has toughened up the rules yet again.
I mean, one of the key things here is we're in loan shark territory here, aren't we, to all intents and purposes? I mean, yeah, we'll just do what we want. We take the money, and there's nothing you can do about that money. You don't choose whether you're going to pay that money back or not. That money is taken. Although, by the way, the people who are getting the loans who are coming from the EU, there's no way of tracking them down. They often don't pay the money back.
So certainly people repaying these loans do feel very often they've been missold them. I would argue actually that's not really the case, because there are these inbuilt insurance features, like the loan gets written off eventually if you don't repay. If you lose your job, you don't repay. And there are some pretty, you know, it's a better deal than you're going to get from your credit card or your mortgage provider. So there are still some really positive features about these loans, but they have been mucked around with. It's not what was put in place in 2012. And they, you know, a fresh fresh look at it.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Exactly. I have to say, and again, an awful lot of people really coming up against it with those high rates of marginal rates of tax at a time when they want to be settling down, having babies and buying a home. And we'd quite like them to do that. It would be good for the economy. So let's talk about really important things. Just those actory people who do insist on pontificating on their usual nonsense, whether it's American, I'm talking about ICE agents or talking about Gaza or whatever it is. They often talk about these things. And one of the big things a lot of actors have been yapping on about in recent years is they're all very pro-trans, are they not? Also, it turns out some of them get a bit confused about their own identity. Olivia Colman, best known, of course, for her roles in The Crown and The Favourite, who's been married for 25 years to a man, Ed Sinclair, has said she has never felt comfortable with rigid gender roles, including in her own marriage. Throughout my whole life, she says, I've had arguments with people where I've always sort of felt non-binary. I've never felt massive feminine in my being female. I've always described myself to my husband as a gay man. And he goes, yeah, I get that. Now, it might be the fact that she is actually doing interviews about her new film, which just happens to look at some of these issues. But let's talk about this with Helen Joyce, Director of Advocacy at Sex Matters and author of Trans, Gender Identity and the New Battle for Women's Rights. Good afternoon to you.
Hi, Julia.
Now, we know trans and non-binary are not the same things. I would say neither of them is actually a real thing, certainly not binary, but when we have very famous, very successful celebrities saying things like, I've always felt non-binary, I'm a gay man in my marriage to my husband. I mean, this is how mad and wide the nonsense has gone, isn't it?
It's just tragic, isn't it? I mean, I would pick out two different things there. Some people think non-binary is a type of trans. Some people say trans and non-binary. I mean, who cares? It's the way of saying that the rest of us are binary. Like when she says, I don't really feel like a woman all the time, I don't feel like a woman all the time. I just feel like a person.
What
it's
does
just ridiculous.
Feeling like a woman, I mean, other than Eddie Izzard, so if I've got my flats on, I'm a man, and if I've got my heels on, I'm a woman.
I mean, everything I do is like a woman. I was like a woman when I got my PhD in mathematics. I was like a woman when I gave birth twice. I mean, these are just things that a woman did, so they're things that a woman can do. It's just childish. Someone of her age should know better. This is a teenage identity fad, and it's a way of saying, I'm not like the other girls. And a grown woman saying that should just get herself together. But the good thing is that maybe she'll make it less fashionable for the teenage girls. Because when middle-aged women want to do something, then teenage girls don't tend to. I actually find the bit about gay much more offensive, because what she's doing is appropriating something real there. Like, it's not nothing to realise that you're gay and to have to come out, and you still do face prejudice. I mean, there's still people who think that you're inferior. There's plenty of people who think that you're perverted. And there she is saying that because she's special, she's not like the other women, somehow she's a gay man. I mean, gay men don't think she's a gay man, put it that way. And her husband thinks that he does.
And the opposite of that has been, as we've seen in dating apps and stuff for lesbians. So for gay women, but by definition, that's what a lesbian is. They are having men who are claiming that they are trans, they are women, and they are attracted to women. They're just heterosexual men who want to have access to these vulnerable women, and they are on these apps and telling these women that they are bigoted if they won't have sex with a supposedly lesbian with a penis. I mean, this is the madness that's going on, but that's just the other side of that, isn't it? Pretending she's in a gay marriage with her husband. No, you're not. You're a heterosexual woman married to a heterosexual man. You're not that interesting.
I was about to say that. She's trying not to sound boring, but there's nothing boring about having made a marriage work for more than a quarter of a century. Why can't she lean into that? I mean, it's just appropriating other people's identities and trying to seem special. I mean, I find it embarrassing when I see it in somebody of her age. But isn't it interesting?
She's saying not only that she's a straight woman, and she's saying that I am a man. Again, untrue. She's saying that I am, or I view myself as gay. She's not. She's straight. Again, we've had this conversation with other guests. If I said I am black, there would be outrage from exactly the people who are going, oh, Olivia, oh, well done. And indeed, no doubt from her. No, in my marriage, I feel like I am black as opposed to white. Unacceptable. Absolutely unacceptable. Yeah. Take her off air. She should lose her job. It's outrageous. Why? What's the difference?
I guess it's the whole rainbow thing, isn't it? It's just been the fashion of the last 10 years to think that it's very boring to be cis, as in not trans, to be heterosexual, as in not gay. So she's just trying to seem interesting. And we haven't had, I mean, for interesting historical reasons, we haven't had the same idea that, I mean, it's not good to be white, that is boring, but that you can opt out of being white by pretending that you're something different.
Yes.
That's offensive. I really do think that what she's saying is very offensive. And I mean, I just think that if I were gay, I'd look at her and I'd think, you have no idea, woman. You really have no idea what we go through, what we decide, what our culture is.
Yeah.
You know, if you want to say you're an ally, go for it. But if you want to try to pretend that being gay is about, I don't know what, like liking Kylie Minogue.
Yes, exactly.
Like,
but this is the thing.
what?
But also, it's this idea about what makes you a woman, and then you get into these things where, you know, the partner with the eggs, or the partner, and you're reduced to your genitalia or your ability to have a child or not have a child. But a lot of it also is down to this very strange. And this Stonewall have done this, and Mermaids did this as well. It's very, and it was pushed on kids at at Tavistock and other clinics. Your idea of, like, if you are a girl but you like guns and cars, and if you're a boy but you like fashion and things and dressing up, so one of you is a boy, you must be the opposite sex. It's a very 1950s notion of femininity and masculinity, isn't it?
Yeah, it's so regressive. I don't know why they can't see that. Like, what she's saying is, I don't feel like someone who wants to wear pink and heels and put on an apron and flatter my husband, or whatever her idea of being a woman is. Oh, and I also think it's very boring to be in a straight marriage and to be married for a quarter of a century and all that stuff. So I'm so special that I must actually not be those things. What she's saying is that people who are those things are boring and not special. Yeah. And she's reducing the idea of being gay to being something like a lifestyle, rather than something that's quite a profound and meaningful thing for people who actually are same-sex attracted. You know, they can be, I don't know, a man can be quite swishy, he can be a drag queen, he can be very heteronormative if he wants, and still be gay if what he's interested in is a life partnership or a love affair or sex with other men. Yeah. That's what it means. It doesn't mean your style. It doesn't mean that you lisp when you talk, or that you get certain haircuts or something.
It is so mad, isn't it? But here's the thing. Maybe she just doesn't listen to anything that any actor or actress or celebrity says. That could be a solution to the issue. And we're joined right now by Chris Phillips, former head of the National Counter-Terrorism Security Office. He's also former Detective Chief Inspector in the Metropolitan Police. So with all those hats on, Chris Phillips, you are the ideal guest to talk to about, well, this spate of crimes we want to talk about, and the crimes that are not being tackled because police are dealing with marches. A very good morning to you.
Good morning. Yeah, community cohesion means that the police need to act in a certain way, have been acting in a certain way, and it's not working.
It really isn't working because there's a bit of a giveaway, isn't it? Now, we're told all the time, aren't we, by Sadiq Khan, the London Mayor, just got a bit of a digging from one of our callers, that, crime is going down. Actually, well, no, violent crime is, and other crimes like, phone thefts and shoplifting are actually going way, way, way up. Look, the sort of crimes we are most terrified of is not having our phones stolen. It's our kids going to school and not coming home alive or ending up in an ICU unit. We've got a 12-year-old boy and a 13-year-old, both stabbed by, it is alleged, a 13-year-old suspect who shouted Allahu Akbar in the science block of a North London school in Brent. This is Kingsbury High School in North West London. Screaming children seeing all this, hearing him shout Allahu Akbar. Numerous witnesses have said that. Police have got they called them the counter-terrorism unit, but they have not declared that this is a terrorist incident. Why not?
Well, it's all about the motive, and yes, you can shout Allahu Akbar, but the motive may be something completely different. It may be a revenge. We just don't know.
We think he might have been a pupil at the school who was suspended. Some of the reports are claiming.
Yeah, and we do need to, leave the police to just do the investigation. I have no doubt that the investigation will come out. The person's motives, this kid's motives, will come out in due course. But it is a scary thought that so many of our youngsters are walking around with knives these days. I mean, we mustn't live in a dream world to say that London was always safe. And, back in the 80s and 90s, there were lots of murders and stabbings and robberies going on. But now, of course, it is multiplied by social media. Mm-hmm. It is this knife thing that has changed.
Yeah, I don't recall. I mean, I went to sixth form college and primary school in London, but it didn't. But not the rest of the time. But I just don't recall this ever being an issue. I don't remember anyone ever being scared that if there was a punch-up in the playground or anything, that a knife would be drawn. No one ever talked about having metal detectors. I mean, OK, it's a long time ago, but I'm not living in some fantasy 1950s creation. This wasn't a thing in that time, in normal sort of of, you know, leafy parts of our capital city or anywhere else. You know, it just wasn't an issue. And again, a lot of parents just are now really scared about sending their kids to school. Or indeed, and I've got to be honest with you, I say there's a stabbing of a 12-year-old kid by 14-year-olds allegedly in a school near me, my local high street. If I want to go out and do stuff during a weekday, I make sure I do it before the sort of 3:30, 4 o'clock mark when they're all marauding along the street, because frankly it's mayhem and they're quite aggressive. I think most people now are just getting a bit wary of marauding teenagers and what's going to happen if, you know, you accidentally walk into them or if someone's carrying a knife. But our kids are having to go to school with these people.
Yeah, it's a multiplier effect, isn't it? Because what we've seen is the police disappearing from our streets. Control of by parents has reduced dramatically. We now have kids who are running households and not the child in the household.
Yeah.
And we've got a criminal justice system that no one's scared of. And you know, in our day, Julia, you would have been scared of.
Oh my God, yes.
And you would have been scared of going to a court, and you would have been certainly. The thought of, you know, going to a court and potentially going to prison would have scared the life out of you.
I'd have been scared of going home.
Yeah, disgrace. That would have been a disgrace. That is not the case now. And
yeah.
And you know, to some extent, society is to blame for this, because we have stopped the police from doing stop and search. And listen, any stop and search is a difficult thing to do. You're going to get it wrong some of the time. But if we don't have that, we don't have visible police officers, we don't have a criminal justice system that works, then we're going to have this multiplier effect of kids being scared or carrying knives and stabbing each other.
Yeah, well, we've got another case, teenage boy who murdered a 12-year-old Birmingham schoolboy, Leo Ross, by stabbing him in the stomach. Completely random attack. He's been detained behind bars for a minimum of 13 years. The 15-year-old, he was 14 at the time of the attack, can't be named for legal reasons. He pleaded guilty to murder at the hearing in January. He's also admitted to 3 separate attacks on elderly women, so he's a delightful little soul, this one. But during sentencing at Birmingham Crown Court, he was basically, it was a serious violence against different people, culminating in that fatal stabbing. And he was just walking home from school when he was stabbed. This is the thing. These kids are walking amongst us. There are adults walking amongst us also committing these crimes. We've got the latest case of a migrant, of a Channel migrant, being convicted of raping a schoolgirl, within a few months, a 12-year-old schoolgirl within a few months of arriving in the country. These stories just keep on happening, and people are feeling like our streets aren't safe and the police aren't doing anything. Well, what a surprise, certainly in London, we've got police basically not able to be out on the beat as many days of the week as they usually are, because they're spending so many of their resources, and that the police officers, week at work is spent policing major protests. What are the major protests that are happening in London every other week? Palestine Action, requiring thousands of officers. So they're not free to be on the streets to keep the rest of us safe. This is untenable.
And there's already too few police officers. There's not some magic box of police officers that they pull out when there's a demonstration, or even when there's football matches, to be honest. That these are the same guys and girls that are walking the streets, or should be walking the streets on a daily basis. But Julia, I remember 20 years ago the police chief, the ex-police chief of New York, came over to London, and we were talking to them about gangs and and he just laughed at us and said, "You haven't got problems with gangs." But now that problem is becoming much more of an issue, and kids are joining up with gangs because they're scared of being attacked.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, again, I've got a lot of sympathy. My daughter wouldn't be carrying a knife because she's not worried literally about going from home to school and being knifed. And lots of kids are feeling that way. It doesn't excuse it, but it's understandable. They are more scared of the other kids with knives than they are of the police or going to prison. And they know they're not going to go to prison anyway. Who are we kidding? What is the solution? Because we're told it's not stop and search, when I think stop and search, and certainly the mums of the kids who are carrying knives or at risk of being stabbed, they're very keen on stop and search. There's got to be something, because I simply don't accept that this is just one of those things we just go, well, these things happen. I think this is something that's actually much simpler to do with. The police know who the wrong uns are. They know who the gang leaders are. They know where they hang out. I don't believe for a moment, if they really had the will, if we really had the resources, they couldn't deal with this.
No, they could deal with it, and we, police have been dealing with really bad people for many years, and if you have the resources to deal with it, then you can do that. This starts actually, Julia, and it's such a boring old thing, community policing.
Yeah.
Police officers I mean, I was in charge of a community unit in Clapham, and the amount of intelligence they would bring in, and then there were teams behind them that would be able to go out and carry out surveillance and arrest. If you break down that first aspect of you don't get the intelligence in, so you don't know what the problem is, then, and all the people that are committing the crime, then you're never going to have the resources behind it to deal with them either. So we do have to, unfortunately, fund the police, give them the powers that they need to do to stop this crime, but actually put a visible presence back on the streets, which allows people to be able to seek refuge or to give advice and information.
Absolutely. It's just that simple, isn't it? James Mathewson, he's a former spokesman for the Labour Party, no longer a Labour Party member, and a commentator as well. Good morning to you, James.
Morning, Julia.
Thank you very much for joining us. Now, you don't often support a lot of the things that any government is doing, let alone the Labour government, but I think you are rather in support of this new law that's been laid down today, which will allow 16-year-olds to vote for the very first time. Why do you think that's a good idea?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been something that I've cared about for some time. I saw the results in Scotland. I live up in Edinburgh now, but I saw the results in Scotland during the referendum, obviously on the UK membership, when they engaged it and they extended it, and I saw how kind of transformative it was for a lot of communities and for a lot of young people especially to feel engaged. You know, there's a lot of statistics that point that if people get engaged younger, that they start and maintain that engagement with democracy, which is obviously a good thing for all of us. And I just think that young people, there's been so many monumental changes, right, in recent years, so many monumental decisions made, whether it be through referenda, whether it be through just elected representation. But those young people don't have a say in that. And then immediately a lot of them, you know, either go into the world of work or take up university places or apprenticeships, whatever it may be. And they haven't had a say, and they haven't been able
neither of the 15-year-olds, should they have a say?
Well, no, because there has to be a cut-off.
There has to be a cut-off. And we've decided the cut-off. So we decided that the cut-off at the age of which you obtain these citizenship rights of voting is when you're an adult. So why 16?
Well, that's it. I
mean it's 16. There's no argument why it shouldn't be 15 or 12.
Because
or
there's
8.
obviously a cut-off point. I mean, that's not...
Yeah, but the cut-off point should be when you're an adult, shouldn't it? As opposed to sometime through your teenage years.
But if you look at the things that you can already do when you're 16, if you look at the decisions you can make for yourself, if you look at a lot of the things that you can do and choose to do...
What can you do when you're 16?
Isn't aligned.
What can you do when you're 16, other than have sex legally?
Well, yeah, it's the age of consent, which means that we know that that person has made up their mind and able to make decisions. And
okay, what else?
Think. Well, it's not me saying what's already.
No, I'm just saying this is the interesting thing that in recent years we have racing. So, for instance, you used to be able to get married at the age of 16 with the permission of your parents. Now you can't. It's 18. You used to be able to buy cigarettes at 16. You can't. You have to wait until you're 60. You can't buy a vape when you're 16. You can't buy alcohol legally when you're 16. You can't. You can join the army, but you absolutely don't get anywhere near the front line when you're 16. They're even going to stop them having social media until the age of 16. That seems to be the plan. And then the next day you'd be allowed to vote, but you wouldn't be allowed to, see any of the campaigning before then. I mean, we've got to a point where we are saying that 16-year-olds who are children are not allowed to do more and more things before the age of 18. And now we're suddenly saying, but they are responsible people. They should have a say in how they govern the country. If you don't have a say over whether or not you can have a glass of wine or a pint, why on earth should you have a say in governing the country?
Exactly. I think, by the way, your point's valid about things not being aligned. I think things should be much
so
more
votes at 18.
No, 16 in my mind, because I'm sorry,
you want 16. You want it to be easier to buy cigarettes, so you know that 14-year-olds are buying cigarettes at 16.
As you say, if you're able to have a child, if you're able to, make these decisions for yourself that we acknowledge already, then why are we waiting until?
But hold on a minute. No one is saying, you know what, you can get pregnant at 11 or 12. I don't think we think that's a good idea either.
No, it's not about the biology, Julia. It's about the acknowledgement by the state of what is a point of maturity, and that's the question.
Okay, but you're mature. You're saying that we should bring everything into alignment, but it should be at 16 rather than at 18.
Yeah, and I'm not going to stand out here and pretend to be a health expert and say that, there's specific reasons why 16-year-olds should be able to drink or anything like that. I'm not going to advocate for that. But the smoking age for me was 16. before.
Well, I mean, I was definitely drinking at 14, and I mean, so you know, but I wouldn't advocate that either. But this is the thing. It seems to me the Labour Party are and the SNP remarkably confused about when they think that someone is of age and when they think someone's mature enough. I had a very mature 16, now 19, but was 16-year-old. At 12, she knew more about politics than most adults I meet. Still didn't think she should have the right to vote, and neither did she. I think it's nonsense. You get the right to vote when you're an adult. We agree that you're an adult at the age of 18. Why should it be brought down any lower, other than, and you know perfectly well, if Labour thought that, and if the SNP had thought that 16 and 17-year-olds were going to be like, you know, voting for reform or voting against, in the case of Scotland, voting against Scottish independence, they wouldn't have pushed for it. This is gerrymandering. This is an attempt to fix the vote.
Undoubtedly their reason, because it's beneficial to them, or they think it's beneficial.
They think it is.
But that's the thing. A lot of Gen Zers now are quite right-wing. I mean, I'm regularly coming across many conservative Gen Zers, you know, so it's not the case that I'm doing this from a position of thinking, well, you know, it's beneficial because everyone's a lefty. I just think that it makes sense because of how our electoral terms work. You're locked in for 4 years. I mean, look at the state of affairs now, right? We elect a government with a big majority that now is rudderless and completely aimless, and nobody wants it in. So, you know...
But hold on a minute. But I'm an adult. I'm 57. I still don't get a say on that government until the next election. But I get a say in local elections, and you know, and our children will get a say in the local elections as and when they reach the age of 18. I understand that you're at least trying to be consistent and saying we should have these kids doing these things at 16. Everything at 16. I'm not sure that's the way the world is going. But I just find it absolutely absurd that you think, I don't know if you've met many 16-year-olds. I don't think most 16-year-olds are very well equipped to make judgments on voting. And one of my biggest concerns would be how much they're indoctrinated at school by teachers, and they haven't perhaps had a chance to.
Julia, come on.
Massive issue. That's why they all think the world's about to die because of climate change, and why they're all thinking they're trans.
Yeah, right, okay. But unfortunately, you're in the minority on that, Julia, and you know that. Because the majority of us in the real world acknowledge that trans people are very real.
No one's saying people aren't real.
Well, no, but...
I'm not saying they're figments of our imagination.
Schools aren't telling people to be trans.
They're affirming it.
Children, right?
They're affirming it. They're lying to children.
It's a real thing. It's a real thing.
No, it's not a real thing. Someone
you just
thinking.
Said that you acknowledge it's real.
No, I said the people are real. I said the people are. No, I'm not. If someone stands before me and says I'm a trans woman or man, I don't think, oh, you're a figment of my imagination. They're as real as you or me, but they're not actually trans. No one is born in the wrong body, and no one can transition their sex. No, it's not an opinion.
It is your opinion. It's a minority opinion.
Who murdered all those people at that school, in that Canada school shooting yesterday?
What are you on about, Julia?
Who murdered? Was it a man or a woman?
No, I'm sorry.
Was it a man or a woman?
No. Yeah, we're talking about education.
Who was it?
No, stop it, Julia.
Stop
because
what?
What you're doing there is you're equating regular trans people.
Regular trans people,
right? And you know what you're doing by doing that.
No.
You're stirring the pot.
You're saying you believe that men can become women and women can become men. I don't think they can.
You are doing something dangerous in doing that, Julia, and that's really you are advocating for linking those two things, which are totally unrelated. I'm sorry.
No, there's a major story in the news that involves someone who is trans, apparently. I didn't decide their identity. They did. But then the media misreports it and claims that it's a woman who's committed a crime when it wasn't a woman, it was a man.
I don't have anything to say about that, Julia, because you're in denial of the reality.
Because it's a bit uncomfortable, isn't it? It's a bit uncomfortable because it's a fact.
It's not that it's uncomfortable, it's because it annoys me, Julia, and it upsets me, frankly, because what you're doing... No. What you're doing is linking people who are having a very hard time right now in society.
It's a massive... I think the people who are being shot by that man who identified as trans were having a pretty hard time too.
Do you seriously think it's clever to link trans people?
I didn't link trans people. No, a trans person, somebody who claimed to be trans, murdered a load of people in Canada.
We were having a discussion
and you lot talk about trans all the time. If one of the victims was trans, you'd be all over this. The fact that it was a man who claimed he was trans, no one talk about it. No one talk about it.
No, listen,
that's what's going on.
The thing is, right now, that it's absolutely despicable to link those two things, because we were just having a discussion.
I didn't link those two things.
Julia, you did. We were having a discussion about schools.
The person who did the killing linked those two things.
We were having a discussion about schools in the UK.
Having a discussion about indoctrination in schools, which is why I don't want 16-year-olds to vote.
Let me finish. Let me finish. Can I finish?
Go for it.
Yeah. What I'm saying is, we were having a discussion about UK schools affirming students about their transness, about gender identity, about anything, affirming them in their bodies, in their identities, just giving them the tools to understand themselves. And you bring up a mass murderer in Canada because they were trans. That is despicable. Come on.
It's just facts.
You brought it up. There was no connection.
It's just facts.
There
was absolute connection. Absolutely. It's the affirmation it's the affirmation of this mental health issue.
You think the affirmation of trans people leads to mass murders?
Wait a minute. Aren't we constantly told that if we don't affirm, then it will lead to mass suicide? I believe that's exactly what parents of trans kids are being told.
Yeah, it leads to.
They are being told that all the time. And that, by the way, factually, is not true.
Yes, it is true.
Again,
Julia.
not true.
As somebody who has
the data is very, very clear. You need to read the report. You need to report. Let me ask you something else, completely different. Jim Ratcliffe. He's getting a bit of a kicking from, quite a lot of people, and getting a lot of praise from a lot of people for saying that we are being colonised by immigrants. The Prime Minister says his comments are offensive and wrong, and he should apologise. I wonder whose side you're on. Tell me what you think.
Imagine, can you guess? I mean, he's a bigot. He's just a bigot. He's letting the cat out of the bag, innit? You know? I mean, just colonised by immigrants. What does that even mean?
Right. I mean, the words have clear meanings.
They don't have any meaning. How can
words don't have any meaning?
How can we be colonised? There is no central effort to take over the UK.
I don't think colonisation requires the central effort. Why do you say he's a bigot?
Because he's obviously indoctrinated by this idea that there's some great takeover taking place, right? The great replacement theory. There's some central effort to try and get people here of different cultures, which, by the way, always just happen to be brown people, to get them here to replace.
That's why he's a bigot.
People. Yeah, it's racist. Yeah.
So he's racist as well. Did he mention race at any point?
What he said is racist. No, because he's talking about the replacement. He's talking about colonization. The language is very evident. No, the thing is, we're racist, Julia, and you should know this because you've had plenty of them on the show. But the thing is, you should know that they don't like being called racists, and they don't like acknowledging.
I think people who aren't racist don't like being called racist.
No. Nobody likes being called racist.
Do you think I'm racist?
Especially racist.
Do you think I'm racist?
I think you've said racist things in the past, but I don't know, Julia. I don't know what's inside you. I don't know what's inside your head. That's what we don't know about anyone. It's like the same as Donald Trump. We don't know what's inside his head. We have to work off his actions and his words, you know?
What have I said that's racist?
Come on, Julia. We're not going to have this discussion live on air. It's ridiculous. I haven't got everything you've ever said.
No, I wouldn't expect you, but you have a view you formed of me. I know 100% that I have never thought or said anything that is racist.
Because I don't think you would have said it if you thought it was racist, would you? You know, but I think it comes from sometimes
you would think it was racist.
Ignorance. It comes from ignorance.
So my ignorance.
Yeah. Okay. Well, just like your ignorance around trans people and what you've just said about them.
My knowledge of biological fact.
No, your kind of opinion about trans people.
My opinion on facts.
I think what we should do for you is sit you down with one of the many trans people that I know.
I've met plenty of trans people. I've interviewed many trans people.
Well, it just fascinates me that you can engage with people like that and understand them and meet them and speak to them, and yet
still hold to biological fact. I'm still intrigued by why you think I'm a racist. Presumably you think I'm a bigot as well. But
this is mad.
No, it's not mad. Because you think that Jim Ratcliffe has said something. You don't like what he said.
Jim Ratcliffe said something racist.
And you think, and therefore he said something racist. You don't know whether he is a racist. It's hard or not. What he said was, you think he is a bigot. He said something racist. Even though no one mentioned anything about anyone's race.
Oh, clever that though, isn't it, Julia? That's why they don't. That's why they use words like colonising the UK. You know, what does that mean? What if we go back to colonising in colonial times? Race is intrinsically linked to it. Of course it is.
No, it's not. No, you're just thinking of white European colonisation. There's been colonisation by every single different culture, race and nationality.
Colonised.
You're just thinking of a very white Eurocentric view. Colonisation, a group of people who settle in an area and then work to basically establish control over the people already in that area. What's that got to do with race?
Yeah, where's that happening in the UK?
Well,
And
I think when people are coming in this country and then demanding that we have, that we basically allow Sharia law, or we allow, for instance, we have people
I'm yet to meet
changing our
anyone, by
foreign
the way.
policy.
I'm sure there's extreme examples, but I'm yet to meet anyone who's done that or called for that.
I think you'll find many community leaders have been doing that.
And if we're talking about asylum seekers,
people talking about blasphemy? It's not talking about asylum seekers.
Jim Ratcliffe doesn't seem to be bothered about the influence of people like Elon Musk, a South African in British politics who's trying to throw money at British political causes to influence our culture and society.
So who are you talking
he doesn't seem bothered about that. That's colonisation.
Who are you talking about?
Elon Musk. Jim Ratcliffe doesn't seem bothered about that.
I don't think he's moved to our country, has he?
No, he's joining rallies. He's kind of influencing culture. He owns one of the biggest platforms for social media in the world, which he's influenced, constantly talking about Britain on it. Never stops talking about Britain. Yeah. So he's trying to influence things here, trying to change things here. Jim Ratcliffe's not bothered about that. So
we don't know. Maybe he is. James, we've covered a lot of ground. So I'm going to leave you as a racist bigot that I am.